It's a good guest. So great.
Just need 1 second. It's loading.
Thanks.
I think he feels I'm not paying enough attention to him.
I know that feeling. I just left mine upstairs.
Okay, we are good to go.
Okay, thank you, Trent. All right, everyone. It is 7:01 p.m. and I'm going to call this meeting of the Old Saybrook Board of Education to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So first up on the agenda is audience of citizens. So for those of you out there, I see, Trent, let me know. I see 2 people in the attendees. Is there anyone else that you see, Trent, that is from outside the district that's that would be for the audience of citizens?
We actually only have 1 attendee, Krista Bachman. I just promoted to panelist.
Okay.
So that's all I see is the 1 attendee.
All right. So if you are interested in addressing the Board of Education tonight as part of our audience of citizens, we would ask you to raise your hand, and Trent would promote you to speak to the board. It would be timed 3 minutes allotted to each person. You would need to say your name and your address. During your address to the Board of Education, you would need to refrain from any kind of boisterous conduct or naming of any individual folks that work for the district or that are part of our school system that we employ. Additionally, the board typically doesn't respond directly to comments. We would either have myself, the chair, respond to you after the meeting, or we may direct the superintendent to respond. So at this time, Trent, do we have anybody raising their hand to speak?
We do not.
Okay. All right, hearing none, we will return to reports from our Student Board of Education representatives, and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so this week we had that the yearbook committee is nearing the end of production. The final pages are being completed and will be published in late March. Guidance in college and career readiness. They're hosting an apply to Middlesex sessions during lunch for community college applications. So they're getting those. They're beginning those. The election process for student representatives to the Board of Education has also begun. So some people have asked me some questions, and that process for the election is getting started. And then the cast and crew of Sister Act are working really hard for the show that is going to be in late March, and the esports team has just started practicing.
All right, and moving on to our Rams sports report, we have the boys had their senior day game on Friday, 218. The record currently, I think it's 12-6. They played a game since then. Oh no, that was the game. That was their win. The seniors leaving are Noah Grace, Jake Butler, Riley Lawson, and Camilo Bracco. For the girls basketball, the Lady Rams ended their season. They were only 3-17, which is unfortunate. And their seniors leaving are Cassie Johnson, McKenna Cook, Ella Hagelston, Beltina Fairtovic, and Sophia Barker. The boys are, however, moving on to Shorelines and States. So that will be coming up pretty soon. Track and field ended their season, the regular season, and Shorelines were completed a couple weeks ago. States were 2 weeks ago, and state opens were last Saturday. We had only one boy place for opens, which was Mitchell De Palma for the hurdles. The girls placed 3rd overall for Class S, so great job for them. And then the boys placed 9th. And then we have the 4x2 relay for the girls, 4x4 relay, and a couple of individual events moving on to state, who moved on to state opens. I don't know the results of those, so I'll have to get info on those soon. But that's it so far. We'll be getting ready for spring sports coming up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So does anybody on the board have questions for Matthew or McKenna in regards to the report? I see your hand up. Karina, go ahead.
Thank you. You may have reported on this at a previous meeting, and if so, I apologize. But what is the esports?
That is just getting started. It's online sports. I don't know if Matt wants to add on to this or Mr. Saunders, because they would know more than I, but that's that.
Yeah, we the esports team is essentially it's a group of individuals who are playing different games competitively against other schools and other towns. There's a variety of, not a variety, but a couple of games that they'll be playing. I believe League of Legends, Rocket League, and there's one more. I'm not sure what it is. Valorant, maybe? I don't know. Whatever. You guys probably don't know what any of those are, so.
The video,
I don't know what they are.
FYI, yeah, video games.
Yeah,
Brendan, do you want to give them a quick overview since you're on?
The third game that's going to be offered is Smash Brothers. We had originally set up to do esports in the fall. Our numbers fell. We are reset up to do it in the spring. Our numbers have fallen again. So we're basically going to start out as a club and kind of just get things rolling where we can increase the numbers for next fall, hopefully. We might not even have enough kids to do competitive against other schools. We might just, like I said, have it run as a club instead, just to kind of get the ball rolling, because it's something we really want to start. And I think it's something that can really get legs once we actually get it established.
Great. Sounds innovative.
Thanks, guys. Eileen, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Yep. So I was just curious about the, apply to Middlesex. Are there any other community colleges that the guidance department is also encouraging students at the high school to apply for or to?
I'm sure there are. I think this one was just focused on Middlesex, or it could be a catchy name. But that's kind of what they've been advertising lately. So.
And to see Joe looking at that, I just wasn't sure. And has it been positively received?
My son's going to do it, Eileen.
Yeah, I think more and more, particularly with the price tag, and in comparison to if you can get the first 2 years of college under your belt at a community college, which my son actually did as well. We were very appreciative of that. It's also good for students who, are on the fence about college. So we've had a lot of interest from kids. When I talked to Casey Rowe, I think it was in the teens at least, for kids that were very interested in doing it. So, and we're promoting it because it's a good opportunity for our kids to kind of get a taste of college that might be on the fence.
No, but that's great.
One more thing to add to that is that I do think that the community colleges are targeting first generation college students. And so working with guidance counselors to make the application process more accessible.
Makes sense.
Did you have another question, Eileen?
Quickly, that I know I saw it, maybe Joe can address it later on, but I know they were saying that for the show of Sister Act, they were going to be rolling out whether you could participate virtually, maybe or in person. And I just didn't want to lose the opportunity. So I'm sure we'll be getting some more information on it.
Yeah, we're not sure yet about the seating for in person, but it's definitely going to be live streamed. We have the rights for that, and that should be moving forward.
It sounds like it will be fabulous. And I like the pun intended. I think whoever put it in there, see the nonsense. Thanks so much. Should be terrific. Thanks again.
Thanks. Other questions for our student representatives? All right, great. Thanks a lot, guys. All right, Karen, correspondence.
Yes, we actually had 4 emails that were sent to the board this week, or the last 2 weeks rather. The first one was sent directly to the board, not to the superintendent. So, at some point she will have to respond at your direction. But this was a parent who was supporting the continued use of mask mandates in the schools. The next one was, the next 3 actually were addressed to both the superintendent and the board. So they have been responded to by the superintendent. And the first one was just about expressing concerns about recess at both Goodwin and middle school. The second one was about, it was a parent who was advocating for parental choice when it comes to masking kids, their own students. And the third was about a question about damaged technology and the parental responsibility for covering that. And all of these emails are in the board's notebook, so everybody had access to reading the full email. And that's all we had this week.
Karina, I see you have a hand up.
I'm probably preempting you on this, Tara, so if so, I apologize. Do we need to make a motion to request Jan to reply to the one that just came to the board, or what action do we need to take?
We just need to ask her to please respond on the board's behalf. So nothing formal, but thank you for asking. It was a good question. Yeah, and usually, and I just simply in this case didn't have a chance to read it before this meeting. So it was good that it came up and it was a good question. So yep, we would just ask Jan to please respond on our behalf.
Yeah.
So awesome. Any other questions? All right, good. So before I ask for a motion on approval of the minutes, we have a correction. There was a question that we wanted to have recorded in last week's minutes in regards to a question one of the board members had regarding the equity presentation. And Eileen, I don't know if you just want to give us the question that you we would have added.
Yeah, thanks so much. So the question to be added would be, were students with limited English proficiency given this climate survey in their own language, considering their feedback would be essential to assessing climate and diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of the strategic plan?
Great. Thank you, Eileen.
Thanks, Sarah.
So we would, I would ask for a motion to approve the special meeting minutes from February 8th as amended. Moved, looks like by Steve and seconded by Karen. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Eileen.
Welcome.
So I'm going to make a small change to the order of our actions tonight to allow for Brendan Saunders and Superintendent Peruccio to talk about the crew cooperative before we do the 21st century skills presentation, because I believe Mr. Saunders has another engagement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will turn this over to Mr. Saunders in a minute. And Ashley Malinowski's in the audience as well as an attendee, and she's involved in this opportunity. So we have an opportunity to have a new relationship with Region 4, Chester, Deep River, Essex, and Valley Regional High School for our crew program. You might remember that we were originally with Lime Old Lyme, Region 18 Public Schools. And as that relationship is coming to a close, we have this new opportunity with Region 4. Hasn't been approved by the Region 4 board yet, but we wanted to bring it to you tonight because time's ticking, of course, on getting the crew team put together. And I'll let Brendan talk a little bit more about that. And to give you some of the details, there is a 2-page presentation, which Trent will put up. I just want to say that this is part of our larger efforts to, whenever possible, regionalize programs so that they can be more robust and that we can provide students significant and unique opportunities. And wherever possible, if we can save resources, that's wonderful too. Brendan?
All right. So as you can see in the presentation, our crew program was started with 7 rowers in 2015. It was budgeted for 450 and then consistently went down. Our numbers on the crew team have significantly dropped over the past few years. This will be my first year as athletic director being in charge of an actual crew team because we did not participate in regattas last year. We are offered the opportunity to join Valley with their team. They were in need of a head coach. Our team is way down in numbers, and Ashley is going to take on the head coaching job at Valley. One of the things that we proposed was that if Ashley was going to take that job, that we would be allowed to bring members of the Old Saybrook High School to Valley to participate on their co-op team. As Ms. Peruccio said, this is not approved by their board yet, but we wanted to make the first step and get this out in front of our board so that hopefully that if and when it is approved by Valley, that we can move quickly. The cost is going to be seriously decreased, actually. We spend $5,000 a year paying Old Lyme. a flat rate fee. Well, as I said, our numbers are significantly down. We only have one student who has expressed significant interest in participating in crew this year. So we're looking at probably at least a $3,000 difference in what this is going to cost to run the program. We're hoping that we'll see more interest. We're hoping that we'll send more kids, if not this year, over the next few years. Crew is a sport that's difficult to get involved in at a young age. We see a lot of our teams dropping. Dropping in numbers. We see a lot more co-ops happening, especially with the smaller schools. Just difficult to get enough numbers to have a competitive team. It's also important on other levels to have JV options as well. So this co-op would allow for us to sustain a crew program, and hopefully, as I said, the numbers would increase over the next few years. If anyone has any questions, I would love to either handle them or pass them off to Coach.
Brendan, if I could, the coach would be paid, it's not listed here in cost, but the coach would be paid by Region 4, and we would pay into that, right?
Yes, so we would pay a per head number or per athlete number based on how many we have, which unfortunately is not looking like too many for this season.
Okay. So I do see, Karina, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. The number 2 to 5 rowers for this season, does that reflect the 2 schools together?
Oh, no.
That's just from Old Saybrook?
Yes.
And how many does Valley tend to get?
I think they're up around 30 at this point.
Oh, wow.
But they have a full established team that's been, it was originally, now it's going to be held at Cedar Lake in Chester. So it's gone through Camp Hayes, and it seems like it's going to be a really nice program for us to be involved in. In the past, we were involved with Old Lyme where we weren't a co-op. We would go after Old Lyme. So we had kids going over to Rogers Lake, at 5 o'clock at night. Whereas now we would be in a typical afternoon practice schedule, which would be, I think, very beneficial for all of our kids.
Yeah, my older son did crew several years ago, and I think it's a great opportunity for the kids. And I think this is a really creative approach to try to foster more interest within Old Saybrook. I think it's fantastic. So I applaud you for considering it. And I do hope that our numbers do improve. I think it's wonderful that Valley has 30. That's great.
Well, if I could add, I was talking to the superintendent from Region 4 this afternoon, and he was really explaining to me what a great program they have, that they have had many pieces of equipment donated by a particular donor, including equipment to move the skulls themselves. And so, obviously that makes a program attractive. So I would like to think that it will begin to attract more Saybrook students.
Karen, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Brenda, you mentioned transportation. Could you just clarify for me, so now that I know we have just one student, how is that student getting up to Valley?
So
or Camp Hazen?
That's still to be determined. Valley has all of their kids meet at the school and then take a bus to Cedar Lake.
Yeah.
If we remain with one student, we would ask that she either be allowed to drive herself to Valley, which we have done with other co-ops, or we would have the bus originate in Saybrook and then go to Valley and then go to Cedar Lake.
But a bus to transport one student doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It doesn't, unfortunately. And she does have her driver's license, and we have done this with co-ops in the past where students are allowed to drive themselves. They're not allowed to drive anyone else.
Okay, thank you.
George, I saw your hand was up. Yep, you're on mute, George. Maybe double mute, triple mute.
You're right. I was double muted. Sorry. Just a real quick question. I mean, the numbers was around 40 back in 2019. COVID aside, is there a reason for the large drop between 40 down to 1, 2?
I can't explain the drop, to be honest. I know COVID obviously was a huge factor. We saw kids going to other sports that were going to be allowed to participate at more of a normal level. I also think crew is just a sport that's going to fluctuate a lot because, as I said earlier, you can't start rowing, when you're in third grade, like Little League, or in, fifth or sixth grade, like other sports, or playing basketball on a travel team, or in middle school. It's something that you're going to jump right into at the high school level. So we see a lot of other athletes who are already participating in spring sports. We have spring is still our biggest season. We have almost 200 athletes in the spring season. So it fluctuates.
Thanks, George. Steve, did you have a question? I saw your hand up before, but okay, you're all set. All right, thanks. I have a question actually. So the cost for the program, the district will incur that, and we're not going to pass that along to the student, correct?
No, we had $5,000 budgeted for our old line program passed, and that would more than cover double any expense that we would have this year.
Great.
So we'll be very cost neutral.
This will all be codified in a document. The superintendent from Region 4 and I were talking this afternoon saying we really want this spelled out in a document. I think their board would like that, and I'm sure you would appreciate that too. And that's been our practice in recent past, to make sure that it's all spelled out clearly, terms, timelines, who pays for what isn't included.
So Jan, tonight you're looking for approval to move forward, and then would we see that document back once, once that was negotiated, with Region 4?
Yes, we can bring that back to you.
Okay. I was just from a procedural perspective. That's what I was.
Yep. We can bring that back to you.
Go ahead, Eileen.
Tara, does that mean then that that old line would be paying $2,500 and Sabre paying $2,500?
This doesn't include Old Lyme. They'll have a different program of their own. This is just us and us joining Valley Regional's program.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, no problem, Eileen. Yeah, we'd be moving out of Old Lyme's program to join with Region 4.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Brendan and Jan? So the motion that we're looking for then, Jan, is to permission to move forward with the crew cooperative.
Yes, please.
All right, then I would like a motion to approve moving forward with the crew cooperative. I see Steve, second by Trevor. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That looked unanimous to me, Trent. So moved. And thank you very much, Brendan.
No, thank you all very much.
We look forward to hearing all about it. And hopefully the numbers increase.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, so we'll move then to our 21st century skills presentation.
This is something that the board had requested hearing more about, and we wanted you to hear the great work that Jeremy Taylor is doing at the high school to really make 21st century skills part of every classroom, not only instructionally, but also in assessment and how we report it out. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Taylor, who can tell you about all the forward movement. And I'm sure Mr. Anastasia is going to be commenting too, all the forward movement that has happened up there this year.
Thank you, Jan. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, great. Trent, do you have the presentation, or should I share it from my end?
I'd be happy to drive if you would like me to.
Well, I don't want to break
As
the
a
rules,
panelist,
but
you have permission to drive as well. So
fabulous. Let me try and do that. Let me see if I can.
Okay, I'll be your backup.
Thank you, sir. See if I guess right. One of these is well, Trent, I need you. I didn't have my system preferences set up correctly.
I was bluffing. I'm not ready. I'm just kidding.
You guys are talented. You should be able to act it out.
I'll race you. Oh, Trent wins. Thank you, Trent. Okay, I'll just make a noise when it's time to move the slide together. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. So I'm here in my capacity as the coordinator for 21st Century Skills Instruction at the high school. So I'm going to be speaking specifically about the high school program. And we definitely have 21st Century Skills Instruction and Assessment going on at our other two buildings as well. But I am less involved in those. I'm going to talk about the high school here tonight. Okay, Trent? So I'm sorry to open this presentation with such a long quote, but I thought this was the best way to frame the issue. And this this quotation from Tony Wagner's book, The Global Achievement Gap, which came out in, I think it was 2009. So quite a few years ago, but still a pertinent observation about the changing nature of the demands that our students are going to be faced with after high school, compared with the demands that kids faced after leaving high school, you know, in the 20th century, when I graduated high school. And really the key observations here are that the basic skills and basic, I don't know if that's the kindest way to put it, but the specific content skills is what he means, you know, flute playing, to take a personal example, right? Geometry, European history, those fact-based, you know, content-based knowledge accumulation is less useful to the kids, in fact, than the 21st century skills, the thinking, the analytical skills that they develop in the course of those content area pursuits. Give everybody a minute to finish reading this here. The last key point on this slide is the last sentence. It's a large sentence, got a semicolon. But Wagner's point is, in the 20th century, it was easy to think about our graduates in terms of, are they going to go be workers or are they going to go be managers? You know, you can think about everybody's role in society in terms of like the Flintstones cartoon, right? Like you're either the boss or you're not. And it was the elites that needed these higher order thinking skills. They needed to practice those before they entered the workforce. And that's not the case anymore. There is not that stratification of role in the workplace, not at any level really. And these observations were based on conversations that Professor Wagner, who is at the Harvard School of Education, had with all sorts of CEOs and, you know, business leaders. He'd go to business roundtables. He would interview folks that came through the School of Management, the school business up there, and he came to this conclusion that we cannot reserve the development of these skills for elite classes any longer. They need to be applied all throughout our kids' educations. Next slide, Trent. What are those skills? What's he talking about? Well, he did a lot of work to lay out exactly what are the skills. He came up with a list of 7. So our goal at Old Saybrook High School and in all of our schools is to give kids the opportunity to develop these 7 skills. And they are worth reading them. Accessing and analyzing information, which, you know, you can think about that showing up in many different areas. Social studies in particular, you know, what's good information when you're reading the newspaper, trying to make sense out of the world. But also numbers, you know, how do you read statistics and understand what they mean? Agility and adaptability. The world's changing quicker than it used to, and we need kids who are able to deal with that. Collaboration across networks and leading by influence. Those are 2 important ideas. Collaboration across networks really means being able to work with other people across a variety of structures. Online, we've had a lot of practice in the last couple of years, certainly. But also dealing with people who are local and people who are remote. Leading by influence is our new model of leadership, both in the corporate world and otherwise. It's less common to have a boss that gives you orders, or to be the boss that just gives orders. You have to kind of convince people to go with you, to be a guide on the side rather than the boss. Critical thinking and problem solving. How do you solve a problem when the steps are not defined for you? You know, you got to come up with your own answers and your own process to get to the answers, and you have to come up with your own questions. What's important to learn? How do you get there yourself? Curiosity and imagination. I love this one. Creativity is now something that everybody is really expected to do. And, you know, how do you teach that? The 20th century model for curiosity and imagination really was, you can't teach creativity. You either got it or you don't. You know, as an arts teacher, I've always disagreed with that. It drives me up the wall when people talk about, like, this kid's talented and this one's not. No, it's you can build that. You can practice it. And Tony Wagner wants us to give all the kids the opportunity to do that. Effective oral and written communication, that one speaks for itself, or I wish it did. And initiative and entrepreneurship is frequently misunderstood because that word entrepreneurship spooks a lot of people who take it a little literally. You know, we're not talking about teaching all the kids to start their own lemonade stands, right? A kid who's working on initiative is somebody who doesn't wait for the next directive, doesn't wait for the next order. It's somebody who sees a need and works to fill it. One of my favorite stories actually came from about initiative and entrepreneurship came from Dave Mitchell, our head custodian at the high school, who sometimes hires kids to work custodial over the summer. And he told me that, there's two kinds of kids that I hire. He says, there's one kid, I can give him a mop, I can say, clean the hallway. He'll clean the hallway that I pointed at, and then he'll stop. And he'll wait for me to tell him, okay, now clean that hallway. And there's the kids with initiative who understand what the goal is, and they figure out what the next step ought to be. One of those guys is going to have an easier time getting and keeping a high-paying job. All right, Trent, going on. So the link to the strategic plan is pretty clear in terms of our goal number 2, high-quality instruction. These are the skills aligned to the vision of the learner, which are referenced specifically in the strategic plan. And in fact, the 21st Century Skills Instruction and Assessment Program was born out of, like, that's one of our action steps in fulfilling the strategic plan. I'd like to point out too, as I mentioned before, that there's an equity component to this as well. These higher order thinking skills kids need to have the opportunity to develop these skills in all their classes at all levels, in every class at every level. We're not reserving these for honors classes or AP classes. No, everyone has to have a chance to build these because everybody's going to need them. All right, next slide, Trent. Okay, so I put our task up here. This is what we're trying to do at the high school. This is the effort that I'm attempting to lead by influence. And it's a simple sentence. When I wrote that sentence down, you can look at it and be like, oh, okay, that seems like a pretty simple task, but it's a massive task, because what we're trying to do is not to have our teachers spend less time on their content and carve out space to also teach lessons on the 21st century skills. No, that's not what we're doing. What we're trying to do is to figure out where in our curriculum that's already in place, the stuff we've been teaching for years, the things that we're really good at, where do the kids already have the opportunity to develop these 21st century skills? Where do they already have it? And once we've identified where those opportunities existed already, we're going to take stock of where our areas, we do a gap analysis, where are our areas of need, which skills are not being addressed as much, as frequently, and then we're going to have to adjust. We're also going to have to make this consistent, because if the kids know that they're working on developing these same 7 skills across all their subject areas, then they can start to make connections between what they're doing in one subject area versus another. Whereas before they might have thought them as completely unrelated. If we're able to with authenticity and quality, point out where these 21st century skills are being taught across their entire high school experience, that's going to be neat, because then the whole thing starts to unify in terms of what's it going to do for me. And hopefully we can forever answer the question, when am I ever going to use this? All right, next slide, Trent. So a history of this, brief history of this, going back to 2018, because I know the idea of 21st century skills began in our district earlier than that. But I think 2018 was when the faculty really started to engage with it at the high school. anyway. This is our first step was district wide. We had teachers sit down with the set of rubrics, set down to develop a set of common rubrics that would be used to assess the 21st century skills for student achievement in the 21st century skills. I forget who said it, but if you're not measuring it, then you don't really care about it, right? So we had to have a set of tools to assess how the kids are doing. Now, what does high achievement look like in communication? What characterizes it? That was quite a task. Next year, we tried them out, not in an integrated across all, but across all classes, but in a pilot sort of fashion in a few classes. We developed rubric evidence guides, which was a great faculty exercise. Actually, I was really happy about how that was going, where our faculty would look at the most advanced column in the rubric and try to imagine what does student achievement in that level look like in each of the classes that they taught. 2020 went off the rails a little bit. We had a lot else to figure out, unfortunately. But our first task when we started to get back on track was to start to inventory where are we doing this well already, and then try and create sort of a curriculum map for where 21st century skills were being taught already in the high school, even if they weren't named or assessed. And this year is the big step where we say, okay, all the teachers, we all know what these are, we all familiar with the rubrics. It's time to go. It's time to implement instruction and assessment of these skills in every one of our classes. And that is the task that our teachers were assigned this year, which was in every class, one time per academic quarter in every class that you teach, instruct and assess the kids in one 21st century skill. All right, baby steps. And that's what we've been doing. So if I could give you an example, Trent, move a slide ahead. I want to show you one of these rubrics, and it's a big, complicated thing. It has three parts, really. At the top of the rubric is a text field which defines the 21st century skill. Below that is the teacher section of the rubric, which a lot of folks were unused to seeing. Usually when we use rubrics in the schools, we don't bother writing a rubric for the teachers. We write one for the students. I'll explain that last. And the bottom is the student section, which is probably the easiest part to understand. What characterizes advanced work in mastery and then developing and beginning. What I find interesting about these things is that if I look at the beginning column, it really describes what school was like when I went in the 20th century. And then all the columns progressively move like more and more into the future in terms of our more modern instructional techniques. Next slide, Trent, because I thought this was too small, so I broke it up into 3 more slides. So here's the text from the top of that rubric, which defines the skill. I chose critical thinking and problem solving here. This is the definition that was given to us. We didn't write this one. This comes, I believe, from Mr. Wagner. So a couple real important parts of this are the last 3 words, real world problems. The best application of this skill happens when the kids tackle authentic problems, real things in their community, problems that help people, but are not abstract. They're not abstract. Like, what's the area of this triangle? The best critical thinking problem has to do with an application. All right. Next slide, please, sir. This is the student side, and you can see that this helps it's not just a judgment thing, right? Like, how did you do? Did you get a 1, 2, 3, or 4? What this does is help communicate to the students what work constitutes, or what characteristics constitute advanced work in this particular 21st century skill. And you can see, if you read across, the first row, to be deemed advanced in this, the kids can't just use the resources that the teacher gives them to solve the problem. There have to be a set of resources that they could use. They have to evaluate them. What's the best tool to solve this problem? And then they need to both plan, they need to design their own steps to solve the problem, and they need to actually solve the problem. They need to execute on it. That's a tall order. Develop and answer open-ended questions. All right, so the kids aren't just answering the questions. They also have to ask their own questions. That's what defines a more complex problem. It's not just, what's the capital of Connecticut, right? It's more like, why is the capital of Connecticut? Mm-hmm. And our final section, Trent, if you would please, is the teacher side. I put this one last because it took us a while, honestly, to understand the utility of the teacher side of the rubrics. When these were being passed out to kids, teachers were like, ripping this part off or cross that out or whatever. Like, don't worry about this side. This is a really useful resource for us, actually, because it describes, the 4-column does, it describes the classroom environment, which is necessary in order for our students to have the opportunity to develop these 21st century skills. If you're not getting your classroom to a 4, then the kids won't have the freedom to demonstrate that they're capable of achieving a 4. If they don't have the time and space to tackle a complex problem, and it really does take a lot of time, then they're not going to be able to show you that they can. So the teacher side is our best tool for identifying lessons, units, projects that are a good fit for the instruction of a given 21st century skill. And what I've found is that a lot of the lessons that teachers have identified as, this thing that I'm doing, it's going to be great for critical thinking. I'll have the kids do it on that. Okay. But if you really think about it, your lesson's only a 3. And we need to change a couple of things to get it to a 4 so that the kids can really demonstrate what they can do. All right. Some real world examples. I asked a couple of my colleagues. Oh no, go back, Trent, go back, so I got to tell the story first. Yeah, right there. Okay, I asked a couple of my colleagues for some student work examples because they've done some amazing things with 21st century skills. And so the first is Mr. Goskowitz, who's new to our district this year, and if y'all haven't met him, I'm just stricken with this guy. He's a very excited teacher. I knew that he was teaching this lesson because the day he taught it, he burst into the band room. I was sitting there doing grades or something. It was really quiet, and the door burst open, and in comes Mr. Goskowitz, and he says, "Mr. Taylor, I need to borrow some costumes because my class starts in 5 minutes." And whatever you need, Mark, what do you got? And he explained that he needed to dress up as 3 different characters for this class. The first character was the drama director. So we got him like a ridiculous fancy hat and like a feather boa or something. And he started the class by dressed as this character. He didn't explain to the kids what was happening. I think they're used to this by now. And he said to them, I need you all, I need a ramp that goes from the stage in my auditorium down to the floor because we have an actor who's in a wheelchair and she needs to be able to move around the room freely or else she can't express herself artistically. That was the instruction that the kids got. You need to design a ramp so that this actress in a wheelchair can move around the room. And then he left them alone and got his next costume on. So they had about 20 minutes to figure out, okay, how high is the stage? How far does the ramp go? The next person that came in was, I think the next person that came in was like the administrator of the school or something, who said, now if you're designing this ramp, it needs to meet all the building codes, it needs to meet the ADA specifications for a ramp. And then he left again, and the kid's like, well, what is that? Like what could that possibly be? So they had to go and find those and look them all up, and then they realized that there's a maximum angle that the ramp can be, and that it has to be a certain width, and it has to have a railing on it. And then the third character was the contractor who came in with a hard hat on, and the third character said, all right, I need my units to be like this. I need a plan that's on this scale, and some of them had to start all over. And at the end of the class, they got all their plans together and they submitted them to him. And well, here's what they had. Trent, next slide. So this is one. And we do like the bees and stuff. So the height of the stage is correct. It's 30 inches from the ground. And they got the angle right. Like, given that angle, figured out how long the ramp needed to be and at what angle and where it would hit. And they even got to see the note down at the bottom, figured out what the width is, what the width of the ramp is to meet ADA specifications. So good job, guys. Let's take a look at the critical thinking and problem solving rubric. And this is where Mr. Goskowitz had them. Did they use resources? Yes, they did. They had to figure out, how tall the stage was, and they read the ADA thing. They didn't evaluate those resources, though. They didn't figure out, is this the most appropriate resource to tell me how to solve this problem? They didn't find multiple ones and compare them. Let's see. They didn't see engage in open-ended learning experiences requiring higher order thinking skills. I think just walking in the room constitutes that, trying to answer the question. But there were more questions to ask. There were more questions to ask in order to go further into this and create something that would actually be useful to a contractor. All right, compare this with the next piece of work. Next. So if you do I didn't know any of this. If you really do your research into the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements for handicap ramps, you'll see that not only does there need to be a railing, there needs to be a landing on either side so that you can turn the wheelchair to face the right direction. Doesn't that make sense? This kid figured that out. How big is the landing? How wide does the landing have to be? And then where's the railing and what angle? See, they got a different measurement here on the height of the stage, but there were different ways to do it, I guess. He explained that the rulers he gave the kids weren't fantastic. So it was okay if they were off by a fraction of a foot. Blame the rulers. And this would actually fit in the auditorium. What was interesting is if the kids used a different ruler, it was too long and it wouldn't fit there, and the ramp would have to have a landing in the middle and turn 90 degrees. So you can see there's a considerable difference in these two pieces of student work. And the rubric, go ahead, Trent. And the rubric helps to explain to the first kid who didn't get anything wrong, who applied the geometry concepts accurately. This helps explain to the first kid what is left to go in order for not to demonstrate your geometry skills, no, but your problem solving skills. What room left is there to grow if you want to be in that 4 category. You got to start anticipating things that were not in the assignment and asking your own questions about how this would really pan out. All right, Trent, next, we'll go over to the English department. This is another application of these 21st century skills rubrics, which I think is equally valid. Mr. Flager had, next slide, Trent, Mr. Flager had, his lesson plans have many, many steps, and they're interesting. They're all very different. Step 4 of this one, and right in the middle of this thing was a creative piece where he asked the kids to design their own monuments, just to get, as they're talking about as they're talking about monuments and public remembrance and creating something that is symbolic for a general audience, he asked them to engage in that creative process themselves, which is really neat. And I can remember in my own schooling having creative pieces in larger projects and always thinking that that was like the fluffy part. You know, it's the part that's difficult to assess, because how are you going to tell one kid that their creative idea is inferior or superior to another? Is it just the opinion of the teacher? Well, it used to be, but we have these 21st century skill rubrics that can explain. The curiosity and imagination rubric is this one that can explain how to come up with a creative idea through a creative process, and to value that process, because once you start to value the process, you can learn the process. And then creativity is not a mysterious black box anymore. It's a series of steps that one can learn to navigate. So the next slide, Trent, does everybody got the assignment there? Like, create a monument. And Mr. Fligger gave me a stack of like 20 examples. I said, Michael, I'm not going to show these all at the board meeting. I like this one though. Team of two guys. Interestingly, one of the two guys is of Vietnamese descent, and the other is not. Came up with the Vietnamese American Unity flag. And it's got like little squares on it, like it's like faded out. And what Mr. Flager and I both thought was really special about this is its creative idea. It's supposed to communicate with a diversity of audiences. It's not focused at one particular audience. The idea is it's a public memorial, which is going to speak to many different kinds of people. And I know we didn't go through the creativity rubric, but Trent, if you could put that up for me there. Here it is. Our art teachers really like this creativity model, because I mean, that's their whole thing, is trying to teach kids that the creative process can be learned, and it's constituted by a lot of error, by a lot of failure, by trying again. That's how we do things in the fine arts department, anyway. That authentic audience piece is a really important one. So is the real world limits of new ideas, because if you create something impossible, it's not going to matter to people. They won't be able to see it. All right. Our challenge is going forward with 21st century skills at the high school, our calibration, which is if you have a couple different teachers looking at the same piece of work, the same student work, are they going to rate it the same? So we need to practice. So that a 4 in science means the same as a 4 in English. Second is authentic integration into the existing curriculum. Authentic integration. We can't just be putting 21st century skills on things as window dressing or stapling it onto existing tasks where it's not a good fit. It really needs to be well integrated if it is going to be authentic and meaningful. And the last piece is consistent instruction. None of us have had training in the instruction of 21st century skills as a part of our teacher preparation. I think that's going to change in the future, but we need to approach this as a challenge for all of us to develop our instructional practice. We're going to get good at it, but we're starting out right now. And do I have another slide, Trent? Oh, I have lots more slides. I'm sorry. I'll go through these quickly. Successes. We did get to all of the 21st century skills in our first quarter. And I have a couple graphs. I have 4 graphs, which I'll go through quickly, which show, it's a little hard to understand. I don't know if any of you glanced at this before tonight. The numbers on here represent the number of assessments in a given 21st century skill. So a student who is, let's see, what is this? This is freshman, right? This is grade 9. So each one of these freshmen, hopefully, if they're taking 6 classes or 7 classes, was assessed 7 times. So there should, if you add all these numbers up, it should be the number of freshmen in the class, number of people in the class times 7. I haven't done that. And you can see how many assessments there were in each skill, and the colors represent the departments in which the assessments were done. So our freshmen were most heavily assessed in accessing and analyzing information during the first quarter. Go to the next slide, Trent. You can see the sophomores, and the pattern's quite different. There was a heavy emphasis on communication in 4 different departments during the sophomore year, first quarter only. Juniors were more even, but critical thinking spikes up, and it stays there for our seniors, which is interesting. The kind of tasks which the seniors are being asked to do are more complex. I'm reading into that. So there are a lot of questions we have about what does this mean, but really the data that I wanted to collect was to start to create a map of where can the kids expect to encounter opportunities to develop these 21st century skills as they move through the curriculum across all 4 years. They are encountering them, they are being assessed, and actually Mr. A and I have been working hard with a lot of assistance from Jeff Chong at Central Office to put together student progress reports on the kids' work in 21st century skills across the first 2 quarters. And our hope is that a letter explaining much of what I have just explained, and a progress report specific to each kid with here's the scores that they achieved in each of these 7 skills if they were assessed in all 7 skills, is going to be mailed home, hopefully by the end of the month. So that is coming soon to a mailbox near you. All right, Trent, I do think that's my last slide. Nuts. Okay. Next steps. We need to work on the challenges, really, is what that says. And our end goal with this, and I anticipate this question, what are we going to do with these scores once we have them for each of the kids? We are not going to report them to colleges. We are not going to put them on a transcript. They are formative in nature. And the idea is the kids will hopefully appreciate the value of these skills in their post-secondary careers. And they will use them to structure their capstone projects. Our hope is that in the years to come, capstone will come to be an opportunity for the kids to demonstrate their achievements in the 21st century skills. Wouldn't it be great if after completing their capstone project, it could be summed up as almost a portfolio, which could be included on their transcript, on job applications, on college applications, to demonstrate their achievements in areas which aren't necessarily represented on their academic transcripts. Wouldn't that be cool? Because I think it would give our kids a real advantage going forward in both the job market and college admissions and whatever they want to do after high school. Okay, that's my presentation, everybody. I would love to take some questions.
Great, thank you. That was awesome, Jeremy. Thank you. Karina, I see your hand up, so go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, great presentation. I have 2 questions. I'll ask them both, and then you can answer in whatever order that you prefer. My first question is, do you and the teachers have the resources that you need to be able to help the teachers advance in their teaching of these skills? So that's one question. Are there any resources that you need that the board can help you with? Anything like that? The other question that I have is with respect to the rubric for teachers. I can easily see on the student rubric where the student's assessment moves from beginning through advanced. For the one that you showed, the creativity and problem solving one, the first for beginning actually seems to be really not supportive of beginning creativity and problem solving. You had mentioned that it's really what teaching used to look like. And I would have thought that the beginning element of the teacher's assessment would have at least had some aspect of providing insight to problem solving creativity, just like the students does, right? Because the students is with scaffolding and support that they begin to demonstrate those characteristics. So I just wonder if you can speak to that a little bit. I know that you said that the teacher's part was certainly harder to create, but if you can give some insight on that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. Boy, did you do your homework, because I didn't. I don't believe I showed the teacher side of the creativity rubric tonight. That's really something.
It's whichever the
If
first
any-
one was. I may be calling it
critical
wrong.
thinking. Yep, I think it was critical. It was critical thinking. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It was a C word. It was a C word, Karina. So, but I knew what you were talking about. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. They went and read the whole thing. If anyone wants to, by the way, all of the rubrics are linked on the district website under the district tab. So if you go to the district website, and then the second tab over is district, I think, and the top item is 21st century skills. That'll take you to a web page where all these rubrics are listed. Now, important to note, the colorful ones that I showed tonight were just the high school level rubrics. And when you click on the big links on that page, it's going to take you to a Google sheet with all of the rubrics, and they're separated into age bands, because you wouldn't expect the preschooler to show achievement in the same way or at the same level that an 18-year-old would. So they're separated into different grade bands. There's little tabs at the bottom. So let's see, the critical thinking. Okay, so the beginning square for teachers says disseminates information with limited real-world connections. I think every teacher has been guilty of doing that, right? Like, if I can tell kids, okay, the key of F has one flat in it. You have to remember that. And that's, without explaining why, or what pieces might be in F, or what benefits there would be to knowing that, it can be really hard for a kid to retain that information. But sometimes we have taught that way. The idea with I think it is progressive. Actually, I think it is progressive, because that's really the easiest way to teach. Speaking as a teacher, it's just, I want you to know this. Here's the thing I want you to learn. Memorize it, and then I'll test you on it.
It's very didactic, and to me, it just. And yet in the student rubric, it expects the student to have to take it to a little bit next level, where it just the way it's described in the teacher doesn't seem to be that way to me.
I would hope that, just as none of our teachers are going to be in the 4-column every day, that's really hard to do, that most of us are not spending much time in the 1 column. And I think that we're not. There are teachers will always argue, and they're right. There are certain things that you just have to memorize. You just have to know that. There's not much room for hands-on experimentation in wood shop on bandsaw safety day. Nah, there's just rules. You just got to know the rules.
Right.
And so, I think any given teacher is going to find themselves in all 4 of those columns at various points during the year. But we need to be in the 4 column if we want to give our kids the opportunity to grow into the 4 column. We need to create that experience for them so that they can learn to function there.
Well, certainly the examples that you shared from the teachers were absolutely out of this world. So I think that they're certainly great mentors for the rest of the school. So that's great. But yeah, if there's anything that you guys need, or if you need additional resources that we can help with.
Thank you. After most of our last 2 professional development sessions on 21st century skills, what our teachers have requested most is just time with each other to talk about how's your implementation going? What have you found works? Just to talk with each other about their experiences with our student body. And finding that time is hard, especially when professional development days get snowed on. But we're working to find the time for them.
Thanks. Good questions, Karina. George, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. Sorry, Jeremy. Again, fantastic presentation, and clearly a very important topic. And so, um, I'm trying to think of how best to actually express this, right? So, I mean, the challenges you mentioned are actually very large, right? The calibration, the authentic integration, and consistent instruction. I mean, those are huge challenges, and you know, a lot of things that you were saying in reply to Karina's questions, you know, addresses some of the things that I'm thinking about, right? But I mean, I'll get to some of the sort of the end thoughts that I have, right? I mean, first of all, let me just say this, that I don't think there is time for a teacher to develop through the 4 steps while teaching, right? I mean, a teacher needs to be almost at step number 4 on any particular reason, like you said, when the teaching safety in the shop, there's no need to be step number 4. It's got to be memorization. But then, whenever possible, there is no time to develop when we need to teach students to develop, right? There is no time for that, and so you know, and you talked about you know, finding time for, you know, sharing ideas and professional development with other teachers. And so I'm just wondering whether there, you know, there's got to be a way in which the system is built, the engine is built before teaching actually begins, right? Because there's almost no time for calibration and authentic integration and consistent instruction while you're trying to build the system, right? I mean, it's almost impossible to do that. The system's got to be in place before you can actually even deal with the challenges. Because if you're having consistencies between the teachers, it's almost impossible to do that. And so I'm just trying to figure out how we can, how you guys really can begin to almost have the system in place before you can even start doing this, right? It's but I don't have a solution for that. I don't know how to say that, right? And again, I don't want to get into the point of coming up with solutions either, but it's a very challenging problem of how we, you know, they talk about, you know, we're trying to build a plane while flying. Well, in this particular case, I don't think we have time to build that plane, right? The plane's got to be ready to go before we can take students and fly on this, right? Because otherwise it just doesn't work. But I don't know how to, I don't, it's a tough problem. I mean, I don't know how you can get consistent instructions when you got people on different stages, right? So anyway, that's my comment, and it's a tough problem. I don't know what you guys thinking is and so on. Like you said, you know, it's. I mean, I don't know how curriculum is developed, and this just adds another challenge on top of this. I'll quit talking. Sorry.
Yeah, George, before you said it, I had the build a plane while flying it metaphor at the front of my mind, and how nice it is to hear from one of my Board of Ed members that maybe building the plane while you're flying it isn't the best idea. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, yes. And as a matter of fact, that's kind of been my job this year, or part of my job, has been to devote my time to figuring out, you know, how do we move this process forward, especially in one of the most challenging years, quite frankly, that I and my colleagues have experienced. It's not been easy. So I've been spending time, Mr. Ray's been spending time trying to come up with materials to help the teachers move this project forward in as productive a way possible, with minimal cost in terms of their time. And it's hard. But I think what I've been gratified by is the buy-in from all of our teachers who appreciate the value of developing 21st century skills in our students, because we all want the kids to be prepared for the world that they're going to enter into. And when the work is important, you know, folks will find a way. I don't mean to be glib about it. You're right. It's a massive challenge. It requires time. So in response to Karina's question, what do we need? We need to figure out how to spend some time on this, and patience too, because as this project begins, it's going to get better later. I think what we have this year is a pretty good start, though. I'm proud of what we've done.
Thanks. So just from a questions order, because Eileen, I did see your hand up, but Karen was first. So Karen first, then Eileen. So go ahead, Karen.
So Jeremy, first of all, this is incredibly important work that you're doing. So congratulations to you on that. So I was thinking about teaching kids with learning disabilities, which presents, different challenges and different approaches and different needs. And is there a specific PD that special ed teachers can use on how to integrate these skills, or is there even a distinction? I'm not sure.
That's
but
an
I always
important
think
question,
about
Karen.
I always
Yeah.
think about the special ed kids and the different needs there, which leads me to also thinking about, and you made many references to how critical it is to make instruction relevant, which we've talked about over and over again, and it is so important, much more motivating for kids if it has a meaningful context. So when talking about relevance, I think it's important to remember your audience, that kids will pursue different paths. And when we're talking about, real life application and examples, we're going to have future doctors and engineers, and we're going to have trade workers, coming out. So I just think it's important to be mindful of the diverse student population, that we're serving. So just a couple of thoughts.
The question of how to adapt these rubrics for kids with various disabilities has come up a few times this year, and I don't think that we have a fully formed answer to it, Karen. But I think the best answer that we've come up with in consultation with our special ed experts is to take a look at all of the rubrics that we have for each skill at the various grade bands, and to make sure that we are assessing kids with the grade band that is most appropriate to where they're at, regardless of what grade they might be in. What is their reading level? We find their reading level and match the rubric to that, and then see what they need. And it's, special. It's special to the individual kid. Maybe they don't need that one. Maybe they need the same one that the other high school kids are using. So we do have an array of resources to get these ideas through to all of our kids. But really, all you need is the rubric that has one more column to the right of where you are. Right? You only need to be able to see the next step to move forward in your development of these skills. And I think we have the skills to do that, or we have the tools to do that. Yeah. Also, the rubrics are, to your second point, the rubrics are written in a general enough way that they're not specific to any one task or path. Like these aren't specific to college. I think they are written very cleverly in that regard. The only trap that we fall into is the one that has the word entrepreneurship in the title of it, which is often taken too literally by folks and misunderstood to mean business development and starting a business rather than beginning an enterprise.
So do we want to change that language? Do we want to rethink that word if it's causing confusion? So, I mean, I agree that all these 21st century skills are applicable to whatever path, it's just, these are just lifelong essential skills to be successful at whatever you do. So, I certainly recognize that.
We have with Amity Goss, Dr. Goss at this point, I believe, planned a cycle of revision and review of the rubrics themselves, because teachers love to improve their tools, and as we take these things through their paces, I'm collecting suggestions from teachers about how to improve them. So the question of changing the name of them, I think, could fall under that review process. We're hoping for some time this summer to get a group of folks together, now that we have some experience in applying these tools, and talk about how to improve them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Really appreciate it.
If I could just add to that, I think that the word entrepreneurship might be misunderstood because we're viewing it in a slightly limited way. I think it includes component of self-advocacy and being a self-starter. So I don't know if it's necessarily just becoming more comfortable with the term so that people understand it and can utilize it more broadly, or if it's that the term itself needs to be changed.
It sort of means, initiative.
It does.
Broader,
yeah.
More, I think, easily understood.
It's initiative, but initiative is part of it, but not all of it. And so trying to capture it all in one word is complicated.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Thank you.
To your point, Jan, even in job descriptions within the organization that I work with, that term is used as a criteria for selection, that demonstrating the skill of entrepreneurship is in job descriptions that we have. So I appreciate your thought around that. We do need to broaden our understanding of the word itself.
It's occurred to me a couple times that the names of these skills are themselves meant to be a little challenging. They're intended to cause a little bit of thought and reflection, just in trying to understand what Professor Wagner's talking about.
As you contemplate the terms, you broaden your definition of what is good communication and how does one, determine whether the communication was good. I think you're right, Jeremy.
Thanks, Karen. Go ahead, Eileen, you had a question.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic initiative, waiting a long time for this in terms of teacher training, in terms of students really being in touch with why they're learning and how they can demonstrate their learning. My question is, to one, I wanted to answer the question, about special education. It's not new news, because when you deal with special education, it was always quote unquote hands-on. How do you make it so that it's relevant? And that's really what we were looking for all students. How do you do it when it's relevant? Because the other way was too complicated or it was too abstract. My question is that when I look at the goals, is this something that students, that when they are doing an internship, will be able to begin to implement this with guidance, because it's not academic. It's something that they're truly interested in learning more about, which gives them having them more in touch with themselves. And so with that might be an interesting, way for them to begin, because it's something that you can apply to many aspects of your life. So I was curious if it's been introduced as a thought for, I don't know who would be overseeing it, but for when they do their internship, so that way it's more personal. It's taking this and making it personal. And I just was curious about your thoughts.
I'm glad you asked that, Eileen, because if she was here, Corinne Using could give a second equally long presentation about the implementation of 21st century skills in her internship program. She has really taken off with this. There are laminated posters everywhere where like the 21st century skill pertinent to that week's reflection activity is highlighted and they're color coded, and it's really, there's a lot of depth to it. But she has enthusiastically embraced this, because through her lens, through the internship lens, now she is seeing the opportunity for kids to connect the learning experiences that they had in all of their other classes directly to skills that they are going to need as part of their internships, and then later on as part of their careers. These 7 skills actually are, when the United States Chamber of Commerce, the Federal Chamber of Commerce, discusses these skills, they're called workplace employability skills, and not 21st century skills. Eventually, we're going to need to find a new name for them besides 21st century skills. It's going to get embarrassing at a certain point. Workplace employability skills is probably a good one. So yeah, rest assured, Miss Using has seen this connection already, and she is already running with it.
And my last question is really about how will students begin to learn what this vocabulary means?
That's the instruction piece that we need to have teachers that George referred to, that you know, they need time to be able to teach and introduce these skills, and it's not something that we've been prepared to do through our teacher preparation program. So we need to develop that capability through professional development.
And I was going to say that many years ago, what they used to say to students was, the acronym was KWL, and it was something like, what do you know? What do you want to know? And then what have you learned? And so it was sort of like beginning part of doing research and making it more practical. Interesting. Terrific presentation, and I wish you the very best, because it's only going to benefit students and their ability to really communicate about who they are as people. And what they found in these skills that was easy for them to understand about themselves, or the areas that they needed to be able to be more fluent in, and how to get there. Super.
Thanks, Eileen.
Welcome.
Great. So I don't see any other hands up at this point. So I'm going to say thank you, Jeremy, for the great presentation. As a numbers person, I appreciate the measurability. You need to measure it, quantify. So that really spoke to me. So I appreciate it. But thank you so much for your time tonight, and to the board for their excellent questions.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Excellent. All right. So diving into another one of our favorite topics, our academic calendar for 2022-2023.
So Mrs. Pendleton is kind enough to have been voluntold into doing the calendar every year. And I'm very appreciative that she does, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. And she's been doing it masterfully for the last 5 years or more. Our calendar for next year is very similar to last year's. I'm going to let Mrs. Pendleton walk you through it. I know Mrs. Broder is the board representative on the committee. I'm going to ask Mrs. Pendleton to walk you through it. No surprises, minor changes. Julie, if you would.
Sure. So Karen and Trevor have been our board representatives, which has been great. This is very similar, and the main differences with this calendar versus the current year, we've added a PD day at the beginning of the year. So that makes 3 at the beginning, and we took that day away from the second day in March. So there's one day in March, not 2.
Can we display it on the screen? Just because, is that possible?
Well, it's not possible on my computer because my computer crashed and my husband had to bring up a new computer that I have no files on this computer that I can grab.
Beautiful.
Trent,
There you go. Thank you, Trent.
Thanks,
Good
Trent.
addition. Good job, Trent.
Thank you. That was the change at the beginning of the year with the PD day. We did have to embed January 2nd, which brings us back starting school after the winter break, January 3rd. So we added the 2nd as a holiday to this calendar. We aligned the vacations with Learn's calendar, and we use Learn's calendar as kind of a framework, but we don't necessarily always use all of the components that are in that regional calendar. And then finally, we have put in the 3 inclement weather / emergency days, but we added some language so that, much like this year where the days may be made up slightly different or in a different order, the days, it's listed in the bottom, you can see it there in yellow, and there it allows for those days to be made up in the order in which makes the most sense given the circumstances in a given year. So those are the main highlights. And we have a total of 5 half days on Fridays. And that's 1 less than we had prior. So that brings us to, with the 3 days, it brings us to the last day of school being June 14th. In looking at a lot of calendars, I had a lot of comments about, oh, well, other schools are getting out, in June 8th or June 9th. And that's because they don't build in the 3 days like we do. So if you back us up 3 days, it puts us into that prior week, technically, if we were to have no snow days. So we're really in line with, I think, most of our area districts.
Great. Eileen,
We also have more professional development than some of the other districts around us, more full days of professional development.
We have 6 and many have 5. That's true.
Eileen, go ahead. You had.
Yep, I was going to say, as an educator myself, I'm sure that the staff appreciates having Wednesday before Thanksgiving as a full day, because to have that as a half a day, people are traveling, they're doing so many things. So I'm appreciative of you making that a day off before Thanksgiving so people can get out and about.
Yeah, that seems to be a really appreciated, little add-on, if you will.
Well, the other thing is if we don't add it on and teachers are going to take it, then you have to get substitutes.
Right, or families go away, right?
Yeah.
Karina, go ahead. You have a question.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, as Jan said, for all your hard work on creating that calendar. It's no small feat. I'm buying time here because, first of all, I want to say, Jan, good call. I'm glad that you added that flexibility in for adjusting snowflake days, because I think it was really a wonderful, prescient idea that you had to be able to allow the kids and the teachers to have this extended break, this winter break, which is, I think, very welcomed.
Yes, very much.
That hasn't happened in the last several years. So that was awesome that you did that. And I noticed that we're not calling Columbus Day, we're calling Columbus Day a federal holiday. Is there a reason for that? Where all the other holidays have retained their names?
We just tried to err on the side of, it seems to have a number of different names recently. So we just left it as a holiday versus naming it.
Federally, it retained its name, didn't it? Or has the government changed the holiday?
It depends. I mean, I think you're probably correct that maybe it hasn't changed, but there has been a lot of legislation in various states that have actually changed what they call it. So we can call it whatever we want.
It's a day off.
If we want to call it Columbus Day, we can.
I actually even advocated for calling all the holidays just holiday.
Yeah, I would say let's go either one way or the other. It seems odd to me that we would change the name of a federal holiday when it's called that in Connecticut. So I would go either one way or the other.
Many of the districts around us are now, I shouldn't say around us, many of the districts of the state have gone to Indigenous Peoples Day. That wasn't something that we didn't want to make a unilateral decision about that. And so this was the happy medium that the committee came up with. But certainly we can change all holidays to just flat old holiday.
Then you have to start going down the list and being Christmas, holiday, and then
But it is for some people. It is just a holiday, right?
No, exactly. Right, I understand.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's a good point. And for whatever reason, it's become the one that's more difficult to
navigate.
Yeah. Good point,
It's
Karina.
my anniversary, so we could all just call it Tara's anniversary, and we all take a 3-day weekend that weekend. You guys can
There you
come.
go. There's an idea.
It's fun.
No one will object.
No. Other questions or comments? All right, then I'd like a motion to approve the proposed calendar as proposed.
So moved.
Moved by Eileen, seconded by Steve. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved. So more calendar talk. I love a good calendar chat. Setting our 2022 graduation date.
Yes, so this evening I'm asking the board to set the graduation on June 16th, which is currently our 180th day. If we were to have a snow day, I don't know, anytime soon, then we would not have to change the graduation date. because Public Act 19-195 allows us, as long as we have 180 days built into the calendar, to set that graduation date whenever the Board of Education wants to. It would mean that if our seniors are going to graduate on the 180th day, the 16th, and we have, I don't know when, maybe sometime soon, another snow day, then they would have to come back the next day after graduation. Not such a big deal when you're talking about one day, because that's usually a makeup exam day. And that's only for students who need to make up an exam. So I did want you to be aware of that. It is end of February. I felt maybe we were relatively safe. Many of the districts around us have set their date already. Some of them set it as early as the fall. And I know that it would help with graduation planning if we could get that date set.
Any questions or comments about the suggested date? All right, good. You answered my question, Jan. So then I'd like a motion to approve the proposed date. Steve, I see you. And then Alan seconded. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved. So graduation date is set. And I would say to Matthew and McKenna, if you're still out there, feel free to drop. It's 8:31. And thank you so much for your participation tonight.
So Terry, I'm sorry. I know the topic has moved, but I do have a quick question. I'm not sure. I mean, I've sat on the board long enough. I should know the answer. But what happens to the middle school in Goodwin if there's an extra day and we set graduation and the middle school ceremony and so on, respectively?
All students continue to go to school. So if the 180th day isn't until the 17th, graduation is just a ceremony.
Fair enough.
It doesn't end the year.
And so would the middle school ceremony go one day further as well?
Most likely, yes. I talked about that with Matt Walton today.
I see.
That we would most likely do that, the 8th grade, on a different day.
I mean, Friday looks pretty bad right now.
Friday looks
I'm
pretty
gonna be
bad.
optimistic.
Yeah.
Let's be optimistic.
Right.
I'd have one mad junior if there's a snow day on Friday. But yeah.
And not a very happy superintendent either.
I'm sure. You guys can commiserate together, Jan. He hates it when he stays. Probably a surprise there. All right. Yeah, but good question, George. All right. So next up on the agenda, non-certified, non-union contracts.
Yeah, Mrs. Pendleton and I just want to make you aware of the number of and the type of individual and collective bargaining contracts that are in the hopper for this spring. This is not unusual. We don't always bring this full list to you, but we just wanted to make you aware of it. There's one collective bargaining group that we still haven't begun with. I think we're supposed to be beginning next month. We're waiting for the union organizers themselves to pull together some things, but our attorney has been on top of communicating with them, and that's the secretaries group. And George and Alan are the liaisons to that group. And then all of the others are what Julie and I have nicknamed the one-offs. These are people who are not in a collective bargaining, but have contracts that come up for, or letters of employment that come up for renewal periodically. Typically, these are about 3-year letters of renewal, and those are listed. And for those, our board of liaisons are Beeler, Nichols, and Chang again. These will be coming to you, and these will be in executive session. They'll be coming to you over the course of the next few months. So we're going to get started on these. Just an awareness.
And nurses are the other group, Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I missed them. There was so little there. Nurses, yeah. They're a semi.
Alan, Steve, and Trevor.
Right. They're a semi group. They're a small group, and it's rather loosely done.
And we hope to get those smaller groups done relatively quick. I'm sorry, Tara, it's so hard to see who's.
I get it. No problem, Julie. Go ahead, Eileen.
I was just wondering, does the person that we hired for the year in terms of social and emotional learning, is she in this, or this is a separate?
He's not. These are recurring. That was a 1-year position. And so if we're going to be bringing that topic back to the board for a second year, it would again be a 1-year ask. So that may come forward too.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks. Other questions? No, this was good. Thank you, Jan and Julie. This is helpful to kind of understand what we've got coming up ahead of us. Great. All right. So moving on, reports by the administration. We'll start with Heston at Goodwin. Any anecdotal comments, Heston, before I turn it over for questions?
No, just that we're excited to begin our celebration of reading next week. It's always a fun week for our kids. We have some festivities planned, lots of guest readers, so it should be a fun week.
Great. Eileen, go ahead.
Yep, so I have a question. I was very excited about being a reader with Trent's help. And my question is, how do they pick and choose, which stories go to which students, or do teachers pick? I just was unsure how that worked.
So what we have done on our webpage, if we go into the library media specialist page, everyone who's a guest leader is listed. And so it's kind of a la carte. So the classes can pick what books they would like to hear about. And they have access to all of them. So it's not really by grade level.
And then do they show that in the classroom?
Right. Yes. Right on Smartboard.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Any other questions or comments for Heston? I always liked reading week 2, Heston, so sorry I'm not there for it. Thank you. Middle school, so I see Krista's on. Krista, any comments or thoughts for the board before I turn it over for questions?
I would just say that the couple of things on our report had to do with, I think, maybe some normalcy, which felt really nice, the concerts, some of the sports that are going on. So it's been really nice to be able to see the kids being engaged in these kinds of activities, and really want to thank the teachers and the staff that have been involved in doing that, because it's been extremely complicated, not just, I'm sure, in our school, but across the district, to make those kinds of events happen from starting 2 years ago up until today. So I'm very proud of the kids and very thrilled that the teachers were so resilient and flexible in figuring out ways to make that happen.
That's great. Yeah, I agree. It was nice to read about, and I knew that there was obviously more to it than just like, oh, we're doing these great normal things again. Nothing's that easy, right?
No, not today. That's for sure.
That's funny. Any questions for Krista in regards to her report or comments?
Question.
Go ahead, Eileen.
Of course. Thanks. I think something that I found really interesting was that something about, and maybe you have something to share on that topic. Very sophisticated, like in grade 7, students met standards about research and informational writing when investigating the harms of fast fashion. And so that's a sort of a new topic for me, although I've heard it, utilized, say, in the past month. So I just was curious to know if you have any information on that, or if you've sat in their presentations. Or
the teachers have definitely, and I think you could hear some of that in Jeremy's presentation, trying to find ways to make the learning authentic, create situations and problems for the kids to be able to solve or find information on. So this was actually a research project that they've expanded on. They've been doing it for the last couple of years, but they really expanded on it this year to make it more experiential and make it an opportunity to build in those 21st century skills, as well as have the students be able to present some of that information to community members, which they did because of COVID electronically and digitally. And the kids really enjoyed it. They came up with some really interesting ideas, and then shared some of those ideas with members of our own community, including some shop owners and so forth in town.
And is there a way is it on a website, or is there any way to see what they've done in that area?
I'm trying to think. I know that they did create some videos, but there are some data privacy pieces to that, but I may be able to share those through Jan.
Yep, thanks. So that sounds really interesting. If they shared it with the community and retailers, it would be interesting to know what they learned.
Yes, they had some direct conversations, and actually in some cases we're asking some of the people in the fashion industry questions about where some of the products come from and what do they do to try to resolve some of those issues. So it was interesting. So they used it partially as a resource to learn and grow, and also as a way to share their learning with others out in the community and make it more meaningful. It was very cool.
Very interesting. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eileen. Thanks, Krista. Any other questions for Krista before we move on? Awesome. Thank you. All right, Joe, I see you're on for the high school, loving the Red Sox swag. Any comments for the board before I open it up for questions?
This is my hard fashion for tonight.
I like it. I like it.
Although it wasn't that hard, it was clean, so I grabbed it. No, I want to thank Jeremy Taylor. I know he's dropped off, but he's been fantastic in his role as running point for 21st Century Skills, and just it's been fun working with him. He's so passionate about it, and I think that's what's driving the success this year. So I just wanted to highlight that. And to Krista's point, yeah, a little bit of normalcy as the spring. Well, after Friday, when the spring beckons, it's kind of exciting to see the kids starting to think about prom and other events that are coming up. And it's the season with the endless smile, we say, when the awards nights start and everything else. So we're excited to finish the year strong here.
That's great. Yeah, I agree. Good to see, this is like the victory lap. I love the victory lap time of year.
And if I could point out that there is the notes that the board had asked, the context for the school start time question. So if you have any further questions for Joe or Karina or anyone from that committee that you would need before considering whether or not to move forward with any changes, please let us know so we can provide it for you.
Thanks. Eileen, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, so Joe, I'm really curious because I'm a big supporter of Socratic Seminar. And so I looked at one of your bullet points in terms of students submitting the argument to the New York Times op-ed contest. And so is it in the humanities classes for all students? Are they getting introduced to Socratic Seminar?
They are, yeah. Socratic Seminar is actually, you'll find it actually in the history classes as well, and social studies. It's something I used as a teacher. It's built on a lot of the principles. Well, a lot of 21st century skills come forward in that as well. And it sort of brings it active. The op-ed piece is that authentic audience piece, which we always encourage. So yeah, audience and voice. So
perfect. So let's see what happens when they submit.
That's right.
Terrific. And that is real world. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Any other questions for Joe? Thank you, Joe. Good to see you. I see that Amity isn't on, so I think if there's any questions for her, we can send them over to Jan to pass along if there's any questions or comments on Amity's presentation. And then next up is Julie. So Julie, any comments before we turn it over for questions?
So I think other than, just reiterating that the bottom line, although I believe is going to remain healthy, those are still some unencumbered funds, things that we will anticipate expending once spring hits. So that's not the bottom line end result. Obviously, we expect to expend a fair amount of that. But we're in good shape at this point. I shared with Jan as spring is evolving and, lead times are getting longer on certain things. We'll keep you posted on projects and things like that as they come forward.
Go ahead, Eileen. You see your hand up.
I was going to say it always depends on the year. I remember last year some of the special education expenditures went down because there weren't students that were necessarily outplaced. But it's very variable. And I was just looking at your remarks in terms of saying that that you're expecting some additional placements on the horizon or coming.
Yes, we do expect that to continue to. The only good news there is it's a partial year. It won't be significant impact, but there are always ins and outs when you talk about special education and the transportation associated.
And is that mostly, as you said, something? The placements are not necessarily within our decision making. Some of them are just made, they're court placed. Some of them are, because I know we try to educate most of our students in-house, but obviously there's sometimes when the specialty is out of the bailiwick of our teachers.
Sure. Yep. It can be that, or it can be just a situation that has progressed and there may be an alternative needed at this point. So it's a combination of all kinds of things that are factors.
All righty.
George, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Julie, just a quick question. So in your summary budget table, the one that stands out is the negative balance for the non-instructional staff. Without any comments on that?
So what we know there, George, is that over the course of this year, I hate to say this, but there has been such fluctuation in that account. I think we're probably gonna end up a little better than that looks right now. Those are projections through June. They also include the 2 positions for custodians that we made full-time for the year, whereby in the past they've been part-time, but we realized some offset to that deficit through overtime and through attrition. So it is such a in and out. There's so many changes in that account. Pam and I were just talking about that last week. So it's a combination of not just paraprofessionals, but it's the non-certified staff in general, and it just seems to have some unusual ups and downs.
And I would add to that lots of turnover, which doesn't necessarily result in salary costs, but there are costs associated with turnover, and that's new for us.
Yes, that is absolutely the case.
Can I have another question?
Sure, go ahead, George.
So I think I meant to ask this last time, Julie, and by all means, tell me to go offline if we need to, right? So, but in your attached table for the non-budget account, I still don't fully understand how this works, and so this may be where we go offline. But is the 600,000 that has been encumbered for the Goodwin air conditioning part of this in there? Because if it is, I'm not exactly sure how to find it. So
no, so what this is, George, is simply those accounts as they started out this year. So let's just take the first one, $535,000. We have encumbered currently 21,000. We have expended 47. The balance in that account is 466. The balance in the regular account is 266 to date. Together, they total 733,000. That 733,000 is where we would be looking to take some of that money for the AC.
I see. Thank you.
It's not encumbered at this point because we haven't finalized those projects. In fact, we've been talking about, where those projects lie. Next month, we'll be meeting with the facilities committee and have a better, better handle on how those are looking, lead times, costs of supplies, equipment, et cetera. So we haven't encumbered. That 733,000 is the balance in those 2 accounts that you hear the Board of Finance talking about pretty regularly. And we have a projected use for the funds in the future.
Thanks.
Thanks, George. Other questions for Julie? Awesome. Thanks, Julie. And I see that Kathy isn't on tonight. So any questions or comments or follow up on her report, we can funnel up through me and Jan. If you have any. Oh, George, go ahead.
I do have a quick question. So maybe if we can just pass this on. So in her report, she mentioned that Leah will be presenting the DESA findings from the Goodwin Middle School at some point in March. And I was wondering whether we can either attend, have the slide deck, or have her present to us. I mean, that'd be interesting to find out.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I will pass that question on that there's interest from the board.
Yeah, I think this is, thank you.
Yeah, great point, George. I think there is interest probably from all of us on that.
And Jan, tell me, what does DESA stand for again?
Oh, shoot.
Okay, I'll look it up. Don't worry. I just looked it because I'm always like, well, you know what? We educators sometimes put things out there, and I'm always like, oh, no worries.
And I know that I knew it at one time, but that is not from my brain.
No worries. Thanks so much.
We'll have to Google it.
And moving on to Jan's report, any questions or comments for Jan on her report? Any anecdotal comments, or Eileen, go ahead.
I'm just curious, I didn't get a chance to read some on your, you went to the conference, and I just was wondering any takeaways.
So the professional development forms that I filled out, I talked specifically about things that I thought we could utilize, the information that we could utilize in the district. I found the conference overall to be good. I thought the breakouts were good. Unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues didn't feel the same way, but I went to some very good breakouts, and the whole topic of the conference was student-centered and equity-focused. And so a lot of the themes were about that. I think it had a lot of relevance to the work that we're doing here in our district. There was 21st century, student engagement, leadership, women in leadership, demographics in school districts. So a lot of what we talk about here at our board meetings was being discussed, and it was very relevant and very timely.
Terrific.
Karina, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question about, I saw, this isn't directly mentioned in your update, Jan, but I saw, was it Cabe that suggested that, and again, thank you so much for standing out on the freezing Valentine's Day and handing out COVID tests for students. And I know that you distributed 1 per student. I saw Cabe had recommended 2 per student. And were we going to do something like that in the district, give an extra kit to students?
So those kits have 2 in them. Those iHealth kits have 2 tests.
Oh.
However, we were supposed to pick up additional test kits tomorrow. The state had coordinated that for us, but because of the inclement weather, rather than doing them tomorrow and Friday, they're doing them Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. When we get that second round of test kits, we're going to hand out another group. We will probably, the plan right now is to hand out test kits to high school students directly tomorrow, and then to all staff tomorrow and maybe Friday, depending upon the weather. So yes, the next round is coming. And I think that, if more test kits are made available to us by the state, these are free. All we have to do is go and pick them up. Then we will get them out to everybody.
Great. And I also think it was very kind, courteous, thoughtful of you to send thank you notes to the parents that participated in the Board of Finance meetings. I thought that was wonderful.
We're so appreciative of their support, and we also want to encourage their involvement.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was a great idea. And I thought it was very thoughtful, extremely thoughtful, Jan. Great idea. Other questions or comments for Jan on her report? All right, then. Before we move on, then I'd like to give the administrators who don't need to be here for the rest of the meeting permission to drop off. And thank you guys so much for your attendance tonight. It's always good to see your faces and hear about what's going on in your schools. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Great. Good night, guys.
Hey,
all right. Yes. The rest of us can't leave. So sorry. Not yet anyway. All right. So let's move through hopefully quickly our board committees and liaisons. So George, any comments for the board?
Maybe just a real quick comment that I think March 1st, I should double check. I think March 1st, the town meeting for discussing the budget. Is that true? I'll double check, but it's coming up real soon.
I believe that is
like that. Yeah.
It is March 1st, 7 p.m. middle school.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks. Good plug though. George, thank you. Any updates from Cape?
I was just going to say that they had a follow-up meeting yesterday from the, I think it's Department of Health, and also from the State Department of Education. And the topic was really about masks, and just sort of teasing out the different aspects and choices by districts. And the phraseology came up about something about parents' rights versus research. And so, it was very interesting, but I think school board members are feeling very conflicted, about the role that they're in. And so are other school board members as well.
Thanks, Eileen.
Yeah.
Alan, facilities, anything to report?
No, we haven't had a meeting. So Jan alluded, or I'm sorry, Julie alluded to an upcoming meeting. I'll have a lot on the agenda to talk about.
Great. Thank you, Alan. Learn. So I attended my first Learn board meeting. It was a lot. I'm just going to say that. It was a long meeting. You guys think these meetings are long. It was a long meeting. But I learned a lot about Learn and their budgeting process. And they've got some real interesting folks that are on their board. And it was very informative. I am happy to share the wealth on the Learn representative again. I'm going to put it out there. If anybody's interested in representing us with Learn, that isn't me, let me know. But yeah, no, it was excellent. I had a chance to speak to their director ahead of that meeting. Very nice person, talking about a lot of the things that we hear frequently from Jan, that we all talk about, how to utilize resources effectively. And I found it all very interesting. So, I'm sure there'll be more coming out of that in the future, but it was definitely drinking from the fire hose. It was like a lot of information. So, I'll leave it at that. So, strategic planning, Karen, anything to report from that?
No, no,
Jan, be the Learn representative.
No, Jan keeps us very much up to date with strategic planning.
Awesome, thank you. If you're bored. So nothing to report from demographics. We haven't gotten together yet this year. And I'll be honest, it's just been such an active year with so many other things going on that, I don't think any of us have taken a breath yet. So, maybe this spring we'll revisit demographics. I'm sure there's things for us to talk about, but I can't think of what they are right now. Anything, we talked about personnel a little bit tonight, Karen, but anything from the personnel committee?
Yes, actually, there's a lot to talk about with personnel because our next meeting is our spring, even though it doesn't feel like spring, it's our spring Board of Ed leadership team meeting. Tara, can we confirm that will be in person?
Yes,
Again,
so it'll be in person at 5:30 p.m.
Yeah. So I'll send out emails on all the details of that. Trevor and Steve, I'm coming at you soon, very soon, with some information to get you guys prepped for the whole process of the next couple of months, which is a really busy time for personnel. That's it. So we'll
more to follow.
Yeah, any agenda items, I always ask if there's anything at all, any topics that you want to put on this agenda, please let me know as soon as possible.
And Karen, what date is that?
March 8th. It's our next board meeting. So it's at 5 o'clock dinner.
Yep, 5 o'clock dinner,
5:30 start time with Anne.
In person.
Yep. Yeah.
And did somebody say that March 1st was the town meeting?
Yes.
That's at 7 p.m. at the middle school.
So it's going to be virtual as well?
No, it's at the middle. That's in person, correct?
Will it be virtual?
I think there might be a virtual component. I will confirm that.
There was for the last one, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
But it will, but will also be
in person.
In person, right? Okay. So that's it for personnel. As I said, Steve and Trevor, stay tuned. We'll be in touch.
Help you through the process for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Eileen, anything from policy?
I think we're taking a little reprieve. As soon as Jan smiles, don't worry, we won't overload you. We're giving you a little bit of breathing space at the moment. Not 17 policies that are coming your way yet.
Okay, yet. Okay, well, you reserve the right to hit us with them though. Thank you. And chairman report, I have nothing to report. The chairman has nothing to report. Eileen, go ahead.
I wanted to say two things. One, just wanted to share that Bob Rader is going to be retiring from CAPE.
Yep.
So I'm going to see if I can't get on the search committee to see some of the things that CAPE can be doing and moving forward for the 21st century. And then I also wanted to share that Jan is going to be speaking to the Old Saybrook Democratic Town Committee on February 28th on the school budget. And that would be important so we can get some support. And she always does a marvelous job, so they're really looking forward to it. And I got her to be first on the agenda so she can go in and out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. That's great, Eileen. Yeah, unfortunately, RTC invited us tonight to speak, but we had a conflict, obviously, with our so. But and then I think after March 1st, we remained silent, right, Jan?
I'm not sure. I've sent an email to Attorney Santiago on that. I think it depends on if they set the date that night. If they set the date for the referendum, then yes, which means I'd have to cancel a performance. Oh my gosh, a presentation I'm supposed to be doing at the Goodwin PTA on the budget. But I'll wait and get a response from her.
Great. All right, so now comes our first executive session. So I would like a motion to enter into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, inviting in Jan and Julie. Steve, I love you. Your hand up. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Seconded by Eileen. All in favor? Aye. Okay, no opposed.
And I'm going to send you a Google link, and Trent is going to mute this meeting. Right, Trent, that's how you're handling it. You're going to mute it and people can just, we will go into a Google meeting. So I'm going to send that to you right now.
Okay. So see you guys on the Google meeting. Check your email.
Did we sign off or no?
Do not sign off of this meeting. You're going to get back into this meeting after the executive session.
I just sent the link.
Do not be alarmed. I'm shutting off everyone's camera and I'm going to share a screen that says the board is in executive session.
Hmm. No, I lost connection.
What?
I lost connection. Give me a second. Yeah, I'm getting all the feedback though. No.
Something that would prevent us from executive session and
We're good. Jan? We're so tech. I just thanks everybody for being so patient. I just wanted to say that are you there? No, of course not. Jan, where are you? Jan, you there? Jan? I just wanted to say I'm in full support of this. This is a very labor-intensive job and well-deserved. Somehow I'm there.
Okay, good. Yeah, just give us a second, Eileen, for us to let Trent get us started again. But good, you're on the right meeting. So that's a good thing, right?
That's a good
You're-
tip.
We never stopped. We're still out there.
So we're live. Okay.
Turn my cameras on.
Yep. So live mics and
Live mics, and everybody just needs to hit their video button to get their camera back up.
so my video won't start again. Trent, it says that I'm not allowed to share.
It says you're not allowed. Hold on.
Yes.
Host,
Mine says same thing. Unable
Oh,
to
okay.
start
Hold
video.
on. I figured.
host
it out.
has stopped. Yeah.
All right. So we'll just give Trent a second to get some of us started. And then we will.
Oh,
There you go, Eileen.
Yeah, I can't start my video. Oh, here we go. Oh, we're back.
Okay, there you go, Karen. See you. Okay, now we're missing anybody. We've got George, Karen, Ellen, Eileen, Jim, Karina. Oh, start my video. Steve and Char. Okay. So at this time we are, it's 9:16 p.m. We're coming out of executive session, and I'd like a motion to approve the proposal for the stipend for our nursing director, moved by Steve, seconded by Alan. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. And thanks for bearing with us through the executive session, everybody. We'll get better.
Yeah, that system
So-
didn't work too well for me.
Yeah. Well, here's the good news. So our next meeting is in person again. So just from a reminder's perspective, our next meeting on the 8th of March will be in person. The meeting itself starts at 5:30. We'll have dinner at 5. For those of you who want to come early and have some food, we'll be sending out reminders. Karen will be in touch with our newer board members just to go over kind of procedures and such. And if there is nothing else, George, is there something else, or are you making a motion?
I'm just no. I mean, it's not just the next meeting, right? I mean, one of the things that we talked about at the last leadership meeting we talked about was basically to basically help out scheduling and so on, to try to have as many meetings online as possible, even if it's not COVID, right? And the
So
thing
this
is
a personnel meeting, though, George. This is with Anne.
No, I understand.
Right.
I understand. But forget the next time. But what I was trying to get is the last one of these meetings we had talked about just in general having board meetings online as much as possible to sort of almost relieve the burden on Jan, right? And that was one of the forward steps we're going to do. And then the question is always going to be, how do we manage executive sessions doing those things? If the last executive session was an example, for me personally, that did not work. That didn't work well. That did not work well because Mike.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I would say, since we don't have this as an agenda item, I'd say this is something we should talk about at our next meeting, George, because I think this is a legitimate topic for that meeting. It's actually a perfect thing to talk about in that meeting. So, I don't mean to cut you off, but But so Karen, I would say if we could take that, because that was something I was going to bring up too as an agenda item for that meeting, is how do we conduct meetings going forward?
Yep.
What might be good about that is with Anne there, she may be able to share some light as to how others are doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might just be a good time to talk about how we conduct our meetings again. So, especially just with all the changes. So, so George, I apologize. I didn't mean to.
No, I understand.
Okay. All right. So with that said, then I'd like a motion to adjourn. Steve, Eileen, second. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you all. And we'll see you on the 8th in person.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
And I can't hear
Everyone.
because you're muted.